Hey everybody, welcome to the latest installment of On Tyranny, the Bad Pennies ongoing series about the effects of authoritarianism on musicians in their artistic process in their lives. I'm very, very pleased to have today um, Neil with Chairmaker out of the UK, and he's someone I've been very much looking forward to speaking with. We've got your first record coming out, Leviathan Carcass, on November 14th. So you must be getting really excited about that. And
Yeah,
yeah,
looking
so,
forward to it. Yeah.
so you're going to be busting out of the gates. And, it's always great to talk with a band that's just breaking through about what propels their music and inspires them, and I like to preface these conversations by saying how much I appreciate you participating. I know it's not always easy to talk about political subjects online, but the reality is, at least in my opinion, from what I'm understanding, probably yours too, authoritarianism has arrived in different parts of the world, definitely in the U.S., and it seems like maybe sort of in the UK too. I saw those, what was it, 150,000 people turn out that nationalistic pride parade not too long ago. But without further ado, thank you for participating. And I just want to ask you, first and foremost, like, how you doing? How are you holding up, and with all the craziness that's going on?
So, so I'm okay. I think so as we'll get into, a lot of my concern is with the hypocrisy of people sort of exporting guilt about things onto places that are worse off if they're relatively insulated from things. And I'm in a fairly fortunate position as a white British guy living in Britain,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
where albeit one on the sort of hard left, but I don't feel I am suffering hu in huge ways on a daily basis because I have lots of people in my life who are far more like vibrantly affected, right? Um, because I have a few friends who are refugees from Syria and other places. I'm married to a woman who is a British passport holder now, but made citizenship relatively recently, and is from a minoritized background. I these days I work in with young people in schools. I used to work in university, so I've spent a lot of time trying to get um, people from minority communities and stuff to come here as speakers at conferences and that kind of stuff. So
oh,
I've always been aware, or I've been far more aware of how it's impacted other people more
yeah,
significantly than it has me, right? Or and conscious of my position as somebody who can comment on these things, but is less directly affected. So I think I'm okay in a large part because the contrast with some of my friends is so strong.
sure.
So I'm getting by. I'm getting by all right. Thanks. Thanks for asking.
But you do still feel their pain. It sounds.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's highlighted more so by or and I'm aware sometimes through my own things the things you don't notice that other people pick up on, or and the things that you don't say, and when my wife or when friends highlight things that I've kind of like, oh, that's never occurred to me because that's never happened to me, right? That kind of stuff. So yeah, I feel like I'm quite conscious of, or I try to be very conscious of what happens to other people, and I run into some of the sort of authoritarian and the bureaucratic roadblocks that
Mm.
come in for some of these things, particularly in my experience of working with people from largely from Iraq, from Syria, from Turkey sometimes,
Yeah.
and trying to get them to the UK and getting visas for people and stuff for things, um, and where you and in the process of writing visa applications for people and writing to the Home Office and stuff to say, can you please let this person in? They are I've invited them and I'm funding them to come and speak at this event that I would be doing at university or something. And the the hostile responses people get, also trying to get family here for weddings.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, so it's pretty apparent. But yeah, I feel like I'm in a relatively fortunate position, right? So.
Yeah. So just to clarify, you actually work in a full-time position that involves you facilitating people to gain I don't necessarily want to say maybe it's citizenship or
No.
amnesty or
No, so I used to. I'm no longer a full-time academic, but when I was up until about a year and a half ago, I was regularly involved in. I don't suppose it matters if I name people. Well, I'm still on the steering committee of the British Association of Near Eastern Archaeology. Right, I was an archaeologist.
oh,
And it would be regular like events for conferences and things like that, where you're trying to bring speakers from the countries we work in.
right.
Um, but it would be made extraordinarily difficult by funding bodies not being particularly keen to help, the Home Office being hostile to people coming in, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, so I was a few times involved in trying to help people get across. I was the treasurer on the steering committee, so I was involved in a lot of the funding applications and stuff to help people, and therefore also sort of writing like recommendation letters and stuff saying, yes, like, this is all true. I am funding this, or my organization is, and that kind of stuff.
Right, yeah. So when you mentioned pushback, or some of the complaints that you're on the receiving end of, have you noticed a spike in those recently? And if so, what does that look like? What is
Um, no, it's relatively static, other than in relation to um, particular political context in those countries. So obviously, um, when the Syrian civil war started, right, that meant there was a pretty much a hard block on anyone coming from Syria, other than people who would come as refugees through a variety of. Usually they'd been in Turkey for a bit and then they were in Egypt or something like that, right?
right?
So that kind of was a hard line. Um, there are difficulties as well connected to in-country bureaucracy and how they support particular people or particular universities and things that causes problems. The Home Office just being very skeptical about people in a way that favors, frankly, corruption
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they basically they won't want to bring, if I want to bring we had a particular case with a young woman who was a master's student at a university in Iraq who I wanted to come and speak.
mm,
Um, and essentially the Home Office just wrote her a letter that said, "We don't believe you'll go home. What have you got to go home for?" Right? And as explicitly as that. It's like we have no we you've not given us any evidence of having a life at home that you would want to go back to. Um, Basically meaning you're an unmarried young woman,
yeah,
and we don't accept your ongoing academic education at an institution that you have put years into is substantial enough, so you're not coming in.
incredible.
And they'll be more um, accommodating for somebody who, for instance, is a senior state bureaucrat or something, right? Who are just coming on a holiday, right? They're not coming to contribute to anything, and they're not, and so it really, it's a part of it is a legacy of our interference in this part of the world, I mean specifically British.
Mm,
There are North American problems with their interaction with these countries and stuff too, and lots of other European ones, particularly Germany,
yeah,
and France and other parts of West Asia. But Britain specifically is implicated in the partitioning of the region, well, as are the Allied powers after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. But
mhm.
the UK helped set up lots of the state sort of heritage bureaucracy in these countries, right?
Sure, sure.
So there's this legacy of how the familiarity of that kind of stuff for our political bodies to interact with, and they're
Mhm.
kind of they're kind of comfortable with that. But people who have like things to contribute, who we want to come, they're just like absolutely not. You're not. We're not having it.
Right.
And that was a regular occurrence.
So
Um,
if I were to say in shorthand, would it be accurate to say like colonialism has come back to bite, you know?
oh, well, it just never went away, right? It's been a continuous process, and we still have exceedingly colonial um, relationships, particularly in that. So I don't want to speak for other fields and things, but certainly within sort of heritage, um, it is very
Mhm.
it's still overtly colonial.
Yeah.
And the colonial were quite good at think tanking and workshopping colonial legacies and what they mean and stuff, but we've been extremely bad at trying to help dismantle any of them, right? And we shouldn't be going in and dismantling them or telling people how to rearrange their
Yeah.
um
Right.
their their
Right.
political and their bureaucratic apparatus. But we've in that we continue to operate within those sort of the apparatus that are already there.
Mhm.
We really help them maintain themselves.
Yeah.
And that's our real problem. And I think that goes for obviously lots of our political relationships with that part of the world or with other parts of the world that have been colonized, be it in South America or wherever else. It's obviously
Yeah.
a regular issue in Africa.
Right. So before we dive into Chairmaker, and how everything you said connects with your musical and artistic endeavors, I do want to ask, there's a real, we're kind of seeing, at least in the States, and obviously, as Americans, we're all very self-focused and myopic, myself included. But we are feeling this real supercharged threat of censorship right now, and I'm wondering if that's the case where you are as well, or
I think so. I think we there is a real habit, and this makes up a lot of my sort of musical output is frustration with this, that there's a real habit for, I think, Brits, particularly, I think lots of Europeans, to use the fact that it is more overt at present, certainly in the United States,
yeah,
as a way of essentially subcontracting our guilt and our to push it, say like, well, yeah, we do have these problems, and yes, there is a creeping authoritarianism here that is present, and we can see that. But I mean, it's not that, right? So
yeah,
it's not like this cartoon character president and stuff, right? And and I think so. I think it's significantly worse here than lots of us let on
um,
because we have an excuse to say like, well, it's not that, and we can also do that in Europe, and we can say, well, it's not like the how successful the fascist right are
right,
in France or in Italy,
sure,
right? So I think we're pretty bad for that, and I think there's also a because the authoritarianism and that and other ideological positions that come from the right and from the far right, because in their British format they're like so polite a lot of the time, right? There's this thing where we just hide behind politeness. And so it's like it doesn't matter how offensive or how obviously um, distasteful things you say are, if they are presented in sufficiently polite language that we're kind of like, yeah, but because he's and because we're so deferent to class as well, right? If you can present it in the right accent and you don't use any swear words,
yeah,
pretty much people are like, well, yeah, but
yeah,
it's not really, it's not like, again, it's not like these people it's not like Fox News,
sure, sure, sure,
right? And
yeah,
we have GB News, which is a close analog,
uh,
but it is politer, right?
right,
And that we use that also. I think we couch these things in civility. It's
yeah.
like a gloss of civility that makes us feel less bad about it.
Which is
So
more,
I think
it's more insidious.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And that's a legacy of, I mean, in part the United States threw this off, right? Because
Right,
that's what British imperial policy has always been
right,
about being sort of a good chap and an honest guy and a stand-up character, right? And you're
yeah.
being honest and polite and gentlemanly
I
about
think,
things. What
I
those
think,
things might be like massacres in the British Raj, you know?
right. I think of E.J. Forster's Passage to India. I don't know if you read that book, but there's a pair of women. I don't know if they're nuns, but they're elderly women who are friends, and they travel to India, and they're Brits, and I'll make a fool of myself if I try to name the decade. It was probably 1920s or something, but they keep little mice in their purses and pet them as sort of a metaphor of saying like, oh, we're being very kind to you. You know, you're under our watch. And it's sort of this metaphor for how the UK had India under its reign for so long.
Yeah, yeah,
But in this very polite, caring,
yeah, yeah.
supposed caring way. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah, so I think we are experiencing the same slide. I think it manifests in a slightly different way and in a less explicit way, but I don't think we are um, we don't have as pronounced legislative changes because of the system of government, basically, right?
right.
That people can't force through in the same way policy. But I think the direction of travel is the same way.
But I'm
Um,
stunned to see though that because it it doesn't. I can't get over how like I have to read The Guardian to get good news on American goings on right now, because the American media is just so bad and the Guardian's pretty strong, at least in my opinion, and as far as what we have. But I did see in the Guardian that the UK is developing like sort of an ICE like immigration squad.
so yes, there has been a lot of um, the traditionally centrist or centre left, I guess, trying to win support that they feel has been lost to the hard right. And the vast majority of this is focused presently on immigration. A lot of it on refugees arriving in small boats, particularly from France.
Yeah,
Um, so there's a real, and that's been whipped up for a long time, and sort of where the public has been, as I say, essentially ventriloquized, right? So that people that probably weren't very bothered about this, but they've been told that that's what, the man on the street is bothered about, and eventually they've got into a position where that is what people are voting for, right? So yeah, that is now becoming so that's now a policy of the present governing Labour Party to start clamping down on and deporting more people and making it far more difficult
right.
to acquire certainly residency, if not holiday visas and things as well.
Yeah,
Um, that yeah, so that's been quite a sudden, or perhaps not a sudden shift in that there's been a growing concern pushed on people about immigration, but actual I think it caught a lot of people by surprise.
yeah,
Maybe not immediately when it was announced, but the shift rightwards by the Labour Party since taking government last year has been pretty rapid.
sure, sure.
Um, so yeah, there is that as we are following in the footsteps.
Yeah. So what about your wife is Turkish. What is her status, and how has all this directly impacted you and your nuclear family?
Well, again, we're quite fortunate because she's an academic. We were both academics together, but she's also a British passport holder. My son obviously has a British passport through me. Um, we've been um, relatively all right. I mean, um, her experience. She also works in London, which is obviously pretty metropolitan and in a big university and stuff, right? So I wouldn't want to speak on her behalf, but I don't think her day-to-day experience of the UK has shifted a great deal. She does talk about feeling quite different in Scotland versus England in terms of the friendliness and things. So we live in Scotland, but she travels down to teach a couple of days.
Hmm.
Um,
What's the difference?
yeah,
Well, not what's the difference between Scotland and
yeah,
England?
yeah.
What's
As she does, I mean, I fit in one of those places more than the other, so I can't really speak. But as an incomer, she says she's always just felt like Scotland generally, particularly Glasgow that we live in, is just a friendlier, more welcoming
okay.
place where there's perhaps fewer microaggressions and things.
Gotcha.
Fewer people asking about where exactly is that accent from and that kind of stuff,
I see.
Um,
Yeah. Okay, so let's turn to Chairmaker, because it is a new project. How much, to what extent, have the has the current climate politically motivated you to create the project? Maybe not at all. Do you consider the project to be divorced from the goings on, or talk about the relationship of your band and the energy and the artistic uh, you know ideas that you put into it, as it relates to global affairs, I suppose.
sure. Well, so it's all explicitly political. It's all very British, I think, or very British is probably more appropriate than Scottish, in that I'm always talking about things from a British political lens.
Mhm.
Um, as I said earlier, I see a lot of it as being commentary, particularly on how British politics and the British public export um, their sort of self-conscious or things they should be more self-conscious about and things they should be more concerned about at home and sort of let ourselves off with things because we can find examples that we feel are more extreme.
Can you be more specific
Um,
about that?
so I'm thinking about things particularly in terms of um, treating other how best to express this. Um, Taking examples of things that are like warfare or whatever overseas, or things that we can blame on people that make our own transgressions seem less severe.
Mm, mm,
And I
mm.
think we do that both in a British sense,
Yeah.
where we do that with global activity, right? Where and it's usually well, the US is doing it is more interventionist
Right.
than us, right?
Yeah.
At particular points in time. Or it is clamping down on women's rights in a more alarming way, or on trans rights in a more alarming way,
Mhm.
right? I think we also do it specifically in Scotland a lot, where we do the same thing with Westminster and the UK government, and also historicize it, where we will talk about, for instance, how empire wasn't really our fault because the government was in London, right? So it wasn't in
Mhm.
Scotland when the
Mhm.
empire was
Oh
moving,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but but lots of the biggest involved parties were Scottish people, right?
Mhm.
Um, we essentially bankrupted the country attempting to colonize Panama. Um,
Fascinating.
and failing miserably, but we had a go, right?
Right.
So, but we have this habit of feeling like because we or lots of Scots feel that we are ourselves colonized, and I think we're not, right? We were whether or not we are able to um, gain independence at a moment's notice, and I say that as a pro-independence person. We weren't colonized, right? We entered into a union, but because people feel like we are, or that we've been held unfairly in that union, or that we've not seen the economic benefits of it in the same way that, particularly London, and perhaps other major cities in England have, that therefore we're kind of not responsible for the other bad stuff that was involved in Empire because, we were kind of on the bad end of it too. And it's like we can't create and we can't equate ourselves with with India or whatever, or even with Ireland, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I think we do a lot of that in British political discourse, and that comes out in a lot of music
Yeah.
I write. My frustration with very specifically British ways of politicking,
Mhm.
also with the ways in which I mentioned it already about being deferent to class. um, the way we allow for particular political figures and things to hold sway despite, you know, decades in some cases of evidence of clearly absent competentness, right? Folk that are clearly useless at jobs but fail upwards because we think they're kind of charming toffs,
Mm.
right? Which Parliament is full of. Um, so these um, things are the main lyrical driving forces, right?
Mm.
Frustration with present political discourse and specifically British ways of doing it badly, or specifically British ways of failing to deal with our own issues and trying to pin them on other people, or at least find a someone else that looks worse.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
that's if the fastest way to self-redemption is to find other people whose failings are worse than you,
That's right.
right?
Mm.
And then you don't have to
Escape
worry
plan.
about your own stuff so much.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what underpins most of it. And then there are specific things tied to quite recent discourse, like shifts in social media discourse and stuff post pandemic, or really from the pandemic, where I think
Yeah.
we gave such voice to basically, I don't know, self-victimized clowns,
Yeah.
people who think
Yeah.
that any accommodation made to improve the life of someone that isn't them is like catastrophic Orwellian overreach. Like anything, so in the pandemic, it became very prevalent and sure, in hindsight, there were pandemic accommodations that weren't necessary and stuff, right? And we know that, fine. But at the time, where it was like, oh, we're going to ask, somebody has asked me to put a mask on in the supermarket so I don't kill grandparents.
Yeah.
That's not like a catastrophic, horrific imposition on my life.
That's right.
But there was people who felt it really, really was,
Yeah.
and like the state was out to get them, um, and that therefore, and that I think's turned into a bit of um, a cult. These people who just think any imposition, anything that is asked of them
Mhm.
that isn't specifically of benefit to them,
Right.
but might be of benefit to them by way of being benefit to society as a whole. Um,
Of course,
and I
the
think,
great irony being that now we have masked agents rounding up immigrants. You know, it's like they're all
yeah,
for the masks when it's their, yeah,
well, no, they've chosen to put it on, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Right,
Mhm.
right,
Um,
right.
so that underpins quite a lot of stuff. I've also been motivated because obviously I come from a heritage background. I'm very interested in how we use landscape and heritage and built environment to either maintain particular ideas or enforce particular ideas. So there's some stuff on there about, um, yeah, thinking about how we use the landscape to maintain and sort of weaponize history and heritage,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
which preoccupies me a lot.
Right. So we got time for maybe one or two more questions. Then I want to give you a little an opportunity to plug your websites and all that, socials and everything. Do you feel like grindcore is a as a genre? What does grindcore offer opportunity wise to get across messages about what you're talking about? Because a lot of grindcore bands, it's hard to understand what they're saying, and it's really intense. And you think back to like the '80s punk, like Clash and everything, and it was just a lot more, I guess, palatable for the mainstream. Can you talk to me about like the connection you feel with grindcore and how that really serves to your benefit in terms of communicating what you believe in?
So I think the I mean, first of all, I can only sing one way, right? That's part of it. So
Right.
the screaming is the mechanism I have.
Yeah.
But I don't know, my enthusiasm for grindcore specifically as a platform is largely aesthetic. That's just music that I love. Um, I do think part of it is that grindcore doesn't feel particularly grindcore to me if it's not particularly political. Um, I think that kind of has to be the point.
Yeah.
Um, so in that sense, I guess it brings a ready-made audience, right? That's it feels an appropriate outlet
Sure.
for that particular um, for that message to be delivered, right? Um, so that's it. I don't know if I have a if I'm I'm politics first lyrically and I'm grindcore first musically, and I don't know if they're necessarily married. It's just that that's the stuff I want to write about, right? I have there's the title track is still very political, but is moderately a bit more figurative. Everything else is pretty on the nose, right? I don't feel massively comfortable writing lyrics, or I guess as more conscious poetry or more metaphorical and abstract things. I'm most comfortable writing things in a pretty straightforward way. I think
Yeah.
in overall, I see myself as basically writing folk songs in the vein of, I don't know, a Steve Earle or Townes Van Zandt or something, and it happens to be in grindcore, right?
Oh,
I like when people write short stories about things that are important. Or about things they think about the world, rather than trying to be consciously poetic or consciously metaphorical, you know?
yeah. Would you
So
put Billy Bragg in that category too, or
I guess Billy Bragg does go in that category too, yeah.
yeah?
Um,
I want to make sure you vouch for one of your own.
yeah, all right, fair enough.
It's-
Unfortunately, Steve Earle and John Van Zant are the greatest songwriters of all time. So they've just that's
Oh yeah.
they've just the North America's just got that nailed. Or those, I mean, they knew each other, and Guy Clark as well, right?
Yeah,
So they've just little a nest, little group of these guys that were just better at it than everyone else. But
right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, when what boiled down to the essentials, grindcore really is kind of the perfect medium for the moment because what we're dealing with right now is speed and intensity and brutality at a level that is unmatched historically, as far as like just what's the intensity of the overhaul of institutions and it sort of does reflect, this sort of feeling of what's going on in a way. I think,
yeah, I think that's true. I think it carries explosive frustration in a way that most musical forms don't, I suppose, or it does it more efficiently
yeah,
than most musical forms, where you can boil that down to 35 seconds at a time um, and go for it. And it's a release, and it has that about it, yeah. And you can get a.
yeah,
It's not melancholic in the way that some sort of lamenting these things would be.
right.
It's a good way for
Yeah,
just yeah for it's just pure frustration and aggression about it. Yeah.
there's no time for that. There's no time. We don't have space or time to lament or just navel gaze or whatever you want to call it. It's like got to act now. Um, so thank you so much for participating in this. Again, I consider every artist who participates in the series, I consider to be a hero and courageous. And I only interview artists whose music I love, and I really, really dig your debut album, which is coming out on
Man.
November 14.
Yep.
Leviathan Carcass by Chairmaker. Can you plug away for the last minute we have here?
Sure. So yeah, the album comes out on the 14th of November. There's a vinyl record that's out there that's up on the Bandcamp. It's Chairmaker Blast is the handle on basically all of the social media platforms. So yeah, that's out there. There's t-shirts and whatnot as well. Yeah, there's another single to come that will be digitally out before then. I think equidistant between now and then, but the 14th is the big date for the record.
You getting excited?
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really pleased with my buddy Arif from Wormrot did the art and stuff. I'm really pleased with how the vinyl looks and all that stuff. So yeah, excited to get it out there.
Yeah, the art's awesome, and then only surpassed by the songs themselves. So
Thanks, man. I appreciate
great,
it.
great job writing. It's a hell of a debut. Really bursting out of the gates, as they say, I suppose. Bang up job. You done, and it's a real honor to interview you, and especially so early in your career. And thanks, Neil. Really, it's been a
Well,
pleasure.
thanks, Kurt. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll be in touch, man.
Cheers. Thanks.
For
Bye
sure.
bye.
Bye.